4 days before Lou's interview airs. From WDSU, New Orleans Evening News. In more grisly and chilling news involving the violence and bizarre incidents happening in Mandeville, 2 bodies were discovered by filmmakers and television personality Derek Reynolds in his apartment last night. Reynolds, who'd been filming a segment for his popular cable network program Cult Hunters in Mandeville, had just returned to his CBD apartment sometime after midnight. Upon entry to his home, he was greeted by the desecrated remains of 2 colleagues, identified as Morgan Anders of Columbus, Ohio, and Jeremy Parson of Jackson, Mississippi, both who'd been working as actors in Reynolds' program. At this time, police are not commenting on the possible connection between the double homicide and the events that recently rocked the small North Shore community, allegedly all centered around the notorious acts of 2015 involving Jeffrey Woods, a teenage boy who'd go on to murder both his parents, along with several other victims, 2 of which were also teens, before vanishing without a trace. It's interesting to note that Reynolds was actually interviewing Jane Arkansas, a young Mandeville woman who was also victimized by home intruders dressed as the iconic Jeff the Killer. New Orleans police have asked anyone with information related to the murders of Anders and Parsons to please call the Crime Stoppers hotline located on your screen. WDSU will continue to investigate and report the latest developments in this strange and terrifying case as it develops. Dalton Bradshaw, formerly of the Mandeville Police Department, sat up in the small bed he was sharing with his bartender Sherry Willis and lit a cigarette. She reached over and grabbed the pack of Pall Mall Reds, taking one for herself as well. Dalton chuckled, trying not to sound too jaded to the world around him before spilling the contents of his mind into his recently found lover. So, that shit leaked right out of Mandeville and is spilling into New Orleans now. Funny. Most of those lily-white commuters living over there were always terrified of New Orleans crime spilling into their backyards. Funny little world, isn't it? Too funny, she replied, taking a drag and watching the smoke drift up to her ceiling. Since Dalton had been terminated from his position as a detective with the MPD, she'd been falling asleep and waking up with him almost every night. Apparently, what she'd thought would at first be a one-night stand fueled mostly by pity with a dash of attraction tossed in, was becoming something totally different. She wasn't falling for him, exactly. Sherry wasn't the type of young woman to do such things. She made it to 26 years of age without ever having an official boyfriend. Therefore, she'd never had an official breakup. She liked it that way. And regardless of the strange Dick Tracy-like charm and excitement that Dalton was bringing into her life, she had no intention of changing her late-night habits to conform to any traditional social rules of these great United States. He seemed just fine with that, which both pleased and annoyed Sherry at the same time. She didn't want a relationship, but Dalton's pragmatic views of the emotional and intellectual connection that she did feel for him scared her a bit. He was almost twice her age. He had been married at least twice that she knew of, and likely had children walking the planet that he either didn't claim or didn't know existed. Regardless of the pride that Sherry Willis took in her impulsive and often reckless lifestyle, she knew that Dalton could hurt her. She wasn't concerned about any physical hurt. She knew that he was, at the very least, the sort of honorable man that wouldn't strike a woman. What she feared was that he was, in her own term, Sherry-proof. Working as a French Quarter bartender gave her the eyes and ears of countless patrons that wandered or staggered into her establishment. Her countless tattoos, she honestly had to guess at the real number now, and carefree lifestyle made her a big draw for the young men and a few women that became lost in her enigmatic nature. It wasn't that she delighted in, or even enjoyed, being able to play the puppet master role with those that fancied her unique flavors, but rather, it was the safety in being the one in control that brought her comfort. With Dalton Bradshaw, she knew that she couldn't hurt him. And in that strange twist of irony, that meant that he could hurt her. She admitted, only to herself when she was alone, that she needed to be needed. Whether it was some tourist who wanted to take home the freaky girl, or some snooty artist from the quarter that wanted to get her naked under the guise of sketching her, She liked the wanting look in their eyes. With him, the only want was a fierce desire to savor the moment he was in. She had been quite wrong about his physical prowess in the bedroom. At first, she believed that he'd be huffing and puffing before he was even halfway done. But he carried a strength quiet but intense, and when he laid her down, she could do nothing to escape his powerful aura. She was enthralled by the physical roller coaster ride of endorphins that he could bring her on. But when he was done, when he would roll over and light a cigarette, she could tell that if she should cease to exist at that very moment, the steam engine that is Dalton would simply chug along as though it never stopped. So, this Derek guy, I remember him, you know? I had transferred to Mandeville when he started making all those crazy reports about being kidnapped by a cult. But I still had a lot of friends in the NOPD. He told me all about him. Now the kid's famous. Good on him, Dalton explained. Are you spending the night? Sherry asked. If you'll have me, darling. She would. The night he'd come home with her, he'd been fired from his job with the police. Another setup. Dalton had kept a little baggie of Adderall in his glove compartment for late night work or early morning shifts. He'd never have believed that Chief Hardy would have the balls to go into his personal vehicle. He told Sherry about the incident time and time again, and as he lit a second Pall Mall, she could tell just by his agitated inhale she was going to hear about it once more. I was a fucking idiot, he began. Never should have kept that dope in my car. I mean, it was my car. Since it was used for official business now and then, I eventually gave my boss permission to search it anytime he wanted to. Christ, though, Sherry. And I known he was after my badge like that. Hardy had called Dalton into his office following the death of Simon Lyman at the hands of a very mentally disturbed fellow officer. The bag of amphetamines was sitting on his desk. Dalton knew he was in a tight spot, but believed he could explain it away without losing his shield. Why is this in your glove box? Hardy asked. Why were you in my car? Shut up, Bradshaw. I'm on a very thin line of decision-making regarding you right now, so don't be the dumb asshole that talks himself out of what little favor I might be willing to do for you. Bradshaw shut his mouth. Hardy continued. This is a controlled substance, detective. Now, I checked your file, and I don't see anything on record that indicates you're legally prescribed this medication. Can you call your doctor right now and verify this? No, it's not prescribed to me, Dalton answered in a quiet tone, choosing his words carefully. And detective, what is the department policy on officers possessing narcotics that don't belong to them? It's a violation, sir. What does the law say about possession of drugs that don't belong to them? It's illegal, sir. No shit, it's illegal. Police detective breaking the law during a time when more and more people out there are losing faith in the cops. And here, in Mandeville, where people have lots of good reason not to trust public officials at the moment. What in the blue hell were you thinking having this shit in your car? If someone gave it to me, I was gonna... Hardy cut him off. You're gonna what? He asked, as he produced a small plastic cup and sat it next to the bag of pills. Dalton knew what the little cup was for, with its measured lines and clinical instructions. If I were to have you piss in this right now, dip a little testing strip in there, you think there would be anything of concern for you? Sir, I was out of line earlier, okay? I shouldn't have stood here and let Lyman disrespect you like you did. I want to close the case. The pills help from time to time, it's all. I'm not a junkie, okay? You know me better than that. Bradshaw, the case is closed on this Jeff Wood bullshit. Done and over with. And so is your career here in Mandeville. Wait, are you gonna shit can me over a few pet pills? Dalton, listen carefully. If I piss test you, you're out the door and out of police work, at your age, no police department is going to want to take you in and have to train all of your bad habits out of you. Police work is for the young and impressionable now. Old dogs like us. Well, Unless you make it to the big office like I did, you're hanging by a thread. But I will do you a favor, okay? I'll let you resign, effective immediately. You could say that watching your buddy, Agent Lyman, get shot was too much for you. You had to take a break, then decided you didn't want to come back. You could still draw your pension without the black mark of termination for pissing hot in your personnel file. You'll land on your feet in time. Now, that deal hinges on you leaving without a big fuss. I don't want to see you rabble-rousing out there. Just leave your badge and your gun on my desk. Go home. Now, someone on the night shift clean out your desk and locker. We'll get any personal possessions back to you nice and quiet. That way you don't have to take the walk of shame from here to your car. You go quietly into the night. And I'll make sure to write a glowing recommendation for you. Bradshaw stood in shock. He felt as though a sledgehammer had been taken to his stomach. His face was flushed with the heat of embarrassment and anger. He wanted to reach over Hardy's desk and pummel the little corrupt fucker. However, soon-to-be former employer was correct about the limitation of his age. Should he be terminated for violating a drug policy, in addition to the handful of other acts of malfeasance he'd got written up for during his time as a detective? He could likely end up lucky to work as a mall security guard. With a good letter of recommendation, though, he could probably return to the NOPD. Maybe even retain his detective position instead of having to go back to wearing a uniform. He'd also run the risk of losing his pension should he be terminated in this fashion. He hated Hardy with a passion. But he couldn't turn down the man's sadistic offer of mercy. I still think you should have slapped the shit out of him, Sherry told him, as she lit a second smoke of her own.
Yeah, sure. Then I could be unemployed and sitting in a lockup on battery charges. No, he fucked me over, Sherry. He knew what he was doing. He did it by the numbers. Sometimes it goes that way. Sometimes you just lose.
Sherry released a sigh. She accepted that he was close to 2 decades her senior, but Dalton's habits of speaking as though he were explaining some life lesson to a wayward child annoyed her to no end. This, coupled with her other concerns over her unlikely connection with the man, finally caused her annoyance to show. Dalton, what am I in your eyes?
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know. Am I just some wet behind the ears 20-something to you? Am I just some chick with a body that hasn't started to droop in the wrong places yet? I've come to terms with the fact that you don't see me as an equal, but you at least see me as an adult? Dalton let out a sarcastic laugh as he picked up an empty condom wrapper from her nightstand and held it up.
I don't know where all this is coming from, Sherry, but I'm pretty damn sure I see you as an adult.
I don't mean an adult in the sense that you can't legally fuck me. I mean mentally, intellectually. Do you see me as a woman or just some girl?
Sherry, the last few weeks have been a hell on earth for me. My partner got his brains blown right out in front of me. I was screwed out of my job, and my so-called brothers of the badge in Mandeville won't even return a damn call. Hardy probably told them to stay away from me. Limp dicks are too worried about their paychecks to see what's right in front of them. And guess what? Through all that, you're the person that's given me comfort. Get my ass sane. You're the person that I look forward to seeing because you remind me that it's not the whole damn world that's crazy. So yeah, I see you as an adult, okay? I need you right now. You're something actually good in this pool of shit I find myself drowning in.
She'd honestly not expected him to open up so quickly and easily, and had been far more prepared to lambaste him further than to process a real human response. Instead, she simply allowed herself to smile a bit, taking in whatever good vibes his midnight confession brought out in her. Dalton, if you're in a tight spot, let me know. Maybe I can help.
Yeah, that's the problem. Your shit in Mandeville isn't done yet. And it ain't gonna be done until something big happens. That's what I think, anyway. Me and Lyman. He did a lot of investigating between the time that asshole Trent Vickers was pulled down from the wall in a shortcut road to the time that other asshole Hardy fired me. I have information I can't take to Hardy. Can't take what I have to the state or the feds until I get something conclusive.
I know you told me Hardy was corrupt, but why wouldn't he want facts that could help solve the murders in his own town?
Well, like I told you before, as far as the chief is concerned, the matter's closed. I mean, why do you really think he pushed me out, Sherry? It wasn't because Lyman mouthed off to him, and I'm sure as shit it wasn't over a few uppers. The moment he realized that I was actually doing real police work, not just rubber stamping the investigation, he knew. He knew I had to be contained. I'm not sure what he was hoping that he'd find in my car. Hell, maybe someone told him about the drugs, but either way, he had me by the balls at that point. He knows that I'm actually a real cop, not just some clown in a costume that would do the town's bidding. So ordering me off the case wasn't going to fix the issue. Instead, he found a way to hold me hostage. Or hold my ability to feed and clothe myself hostage anyway. So now I'm stuck here with cold, hard evidence. And if I try to make a move, he'll see that I'm blackballed right out of the only profession that I could ever achieve marginal success at.
You're not a coward, Dalton. You wouldn't have made it inside of my front door if I detected a coward vibe from you. You're a balls-out motherfucker. And until you do what you do best, you're not going to get over this.
Sure, yeah. Let's go balls to the wall, kiddo. And when I'm knocking on the door with a suitcase in each hand, you gonna take me in?
Stop with the victim noise. Shit, man. Just because you don't have a badge anymore doesn't mean you can't keep looking into this.
That's kind of exactly what it means. To do police work, you have to be a police officer.
Yeah? So are all the journalists out there cops? Dalton sat up but didn't speak. He reached for another cigarette, but only let it sit unlit between his fingers. Sherry had spoken a truth that he'd rattled around in his own head quite a few times over the last few weeks. He'd been thinking like a cop for so long that he'd forgotten there were other avenues. As much as he hated the press, he couldn't deny their success in uncovering crimes, oftentimes faster and in better fashion than the police. He had a concealed carry permit and a personal firearm. He'd had almost 20 years of experience working some of the meanest beats in New Orleans. And most of all, the hard work was already done. What are you thinking, Dalton? Sherry asked, bringing the former detective out of his mental retreat and back into reality.
I'm thinking you're gonna need coffee. Lots of it. If you're gonna be any use to me in this, you're gonna have to be up to speed on the facts of the case.
She smiled, trying to maintain her excitement under the veil of her apathetic exterior. Okay. I'll brew coffee. Just how late are we gonna be up?
Be glad you work nights, darling. Because we're gonna be burning some midnight oil.
The day after the body of Trent Vickers was found nailed to a wall on Shortcut Road, Dalton and Simon sat parked on the shoulder of Highway 109, looking at the sad and neglected sign. Southeast Louisiana Psychiatric Hospital.
This place has gone downhill over the years, and already at the bottom of the hill, halfway buried in a hole,
Dalton mumbled to his partner. Oh, come on now, Dalton. I'm sure this is a great place to come and have your brains scrambled. Come for the Thorazine, stay for the basket weaving.
Can the jokes, this is serious. This hospital is a damn linchpin. Both Trent Vickers and Brianna Van Tine-Janzen spent time here. My guess is they got to know each other behind these very walls, and maybe even drew up the plans for Jeff's killers in there.
But both of them are dead now, and someone is still out there doing this shit. I mean, Vickers didn't nail himself to that wall.
No, he didn't, Simon. And I'll be damned if I'm not going to turn over this rock and look to see what kind of vermin comes scurrying out. Someone here might remember something. Maybe Vickers and Antoinette had a little group of like-minded freaks. Maybe they had a leader. It's worth a look, if nothing else.
Yeah, but without a warrant, those doors aren't going to just turn over privileged information about their patients. Which reminds me, why aren't we getting a warrant first?
Simon, I'm not sure if you're aware, but my boss wants this done in a certain way. That way is, as I like to call it, the bullshit way. Mandeville is, it's more concerned about sweeping this under the rug than they are about actually solving a case. If we try for a warrant, I'll be denied, right after the judge shuts us down. I promise you his first call will be to Chief Hardy, who will then promptly order us to back down. No, if we want to get this done, we have to fly under the radar a bit.
Fair enough. But that doesn't help us convince a doctor to just up and violate HIPAA laws, now does it? Dalton chuckled.
Right you are. But we aren't going to count on any shrinks to help us out. Doctors are tough to crack in these situations anyway. Too rich for a slob like me to try and bribe, and if I try any old-school cop tricks to pressure them into talking, they can easily report me for harassment. After all, not like we're trying to get some crackhead to rat on his suppliers or something. No, trying to convince a guy who brings home more cash in a month than I do in a year to break the law, it's not an easy mountain to climb. But doctors aren't the only ones with information, you know.
Dalton pulled his car into the long and narrow street that led from Highway 190 into the hospital grounds. About 100 meters away from them was a security building. As they slowly approached, Dalton continued his lecture.
No, guy we're looking for is most likely going to be an orderly. Some hospitals call them techs. They're essentially big guys, white coats, come in, hold the loony down until a nurse can inject him full of calm the fuck down juice. My cousin used to do that over at the charity hospital. Job pays shit, usually just a hair above minimum wage. It's dangerous as all hell. The doctors and nurses tend to look down on the techs too, at least according to my cousin. However, the orderlies, well, they're privy to a lot of information about patients.
Really, Dalton? We're gonna lean on some dude, barely making enough to live on? That sounds kind of shitty.
Not at all. Tricky is find the right one. I'll know when I see him. You want the guy that hates the job, feels underappreciated, and those types. Those types are always in a big hurry to fuck over their employers. If we do this right, he'll practically be leaning on us.
Dalton slowed his car to a stop once they reached the security booth. A quick flash of badges followed with the security officer paying extra attention and perhaps a bit of awe at Simon's state police shield. Anything I need to be aware of? The guard asked.
Nah. We're just here to follow up on an investigation from in town. We need to talk to a few facility members, Dalton answered.
Okay. Just make sure that you're wearing these at all times on hospital grounds, the guard slated as he handed Simon and Dalton plastic laminated cards marked official. Hey, look, Dalton, I'm official, Simon announced with bogus enthusiasm as they drove further into the hospital grounds.
Yeah, you're official pain in my ass is what you are. Keep your eyes peeled. We need to find the juvenile ward.
The sprawling grounds that made up Southeast Louisiana Psych were clearly in disrepair. The hospital was state-funded, which meant that the funds were short most years. Many of the buildings appeared run down and very much out of date. Dalton followed the posted signs until he felt confident that he'd found the right place. New Hope was the name of the building designated for juvenile patients. Both men observed that at some point in time someone had spray-painted a line over the word New and altered the sign to state No Hope. From the looks of the structure, a 2-story brown brick building surrounded by dying trees and high grass, Dalton felt the rebellious little graffiti was at least partially apt. So, now what? We're just gonna sit here until some employee walks out and announces to us that they hate their job, that they can't wait to spill beans? Simon asked.
Let's go bait the trap.
Simon and Dalton entered the New Hope building lobby, which, much like the exterior of the structure, was dreary and depressing. The lobby contained 2 rows of those old plastic seats that started off uncomfortable and eventually led to symptoms of a broken tailbone. Mounted to the wall was an old television that was playing only static. It had 2 rabbit ear antennas mounted to the top, and Simon speculated that even when it was new, that television likely played one channel, with a heavy coating of static fuzz. The walls were painted a color that Dalton could only describe as battleship gray, and the tiled floor looked as though it had a long-standing grudge with the local mob. Christ, Dalt. They really expect kids to get mentally healthy in a place like this? Well, we've been here for less than 2 minutes. I already want to call my mom.
Relax, cowboy. You won't be here long. I'll admit, though, if this is the part of the building they're willing to show the public, I wouldn't want to see what the off-limits area looked like.
A few moments later, they heard movement from behind the frosted glass wall that surrounded what both men assumed was the receptionist desk. As they approached, the small window slid to the side, revealing a haggard-looking woman of roughly 50 years of age. She was wearing a set of nurse's scrubs. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked. Her voice shocked them, as it was in stark contrast with her appearance. She sounded warm and approachable. They took this as a good sign.
"Yes, ma'am. My name is Detective Dalton Bradshaw, with the Mandeville Police. This is Agent Simon Lyman with the State Police. We're following up on an ongoing case. We're hoping to speak with Dr. Joseph Sawyer."
Sawyer, according to the notes given to the investigators by medical examiner Marla Darrow, had been the psychiatrist in charge of Brian Antoinez's treatment during his extensive time under the care of the Department of Health and Hospitals. "I'm sorry, Detective, but Dr. Sawyer doesn't work here anymore." Dalton feigned disappointment, knowing full well that he wasn't going to get a sit-down with a good doctor. Even if Sawyer was at work, the chances of him sitting down and discussing a patient with 2 bonehead cops was about as likely as Marla Darrow going on a date with Simon. However, as the seasoned gumshoe looked past the nurse and into the small office behind her station, he knew he was on the right track. Dalton eyed 2 men sitting at the small table in what was most likely to be the staff break room. Both wore white scrubs. A blond man looked over his shoulder at the mention of Sawyer, and Dalton even caught a glimpse of him tapping his buddy, a much older guy, on the shoulder. They were listening. The blonde looked too young to be a doctor, even an intern. The other guy, as far as Dalton could tell, looked too dumb to pass high school life science, let alone go to medical school. They were orderlies, and Bradshaw could only hope that one of them was disgruntled. Dalton completed setting the trap with his parting words to the nurse.
"Yeah, it's just too bad, Hoping to chat with him."
Then, turning his attention to Simon, but raising his voice intentionally, Dalton finished with,
"Okay, let's get back out to Shortcut Road before it gets dark."
Both men heard the nurse draw in a quick breath. Word had spread overnight that a man was found nailed to the wall out there. Bradshaw exited the building with Simon following close behind. Dalt, I might not have all your years of expert police experience, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you gather information."
"Sit and wait, my dear dummy, and watch as the case investigates itself."
A smug grin appeared on Dalton's face as he led his partner over to a wooden gazebo situated in front of the New Hope building. A sign announced "smoking area" was nailed to one of the wooden support posts. Dalton sat down on one of the wooden benches and lit a cigarette.
2 guys were listening in behind the nurse's station. Their ears perked up as soon as I mentioned Sawyer's name, and I'll bet you that their heads nearly exploded when I tossed out Shortcut Road. I'll bet you they'll be out here any minute now. There's something to say on the matter.
After about an hour of no activity, Dalton felt his confidence begin to drop off. "Any minute now, huh?" Simon asked.
"Shit. Yeah, leave it to my ass to come out on the one day where the assholes that actually like their jobs are on duty."
Go easy on yourself. It was a good try. Hey, maybe I can make some calls back to Baton Rouge. Get us that warrant without Hardy having to know. If that doesn't work, I can come and commit myself tomorrow to get the inside scoop. I think chronic masturbation to Animal Planet shows is technically a mental disorder. Dalton smiled in spite of their setbacks. Simon was strange. and unorthodox. But he was trying to find solutions, and the grizzled veteran cop appreciated that, although he'd never tell his young partner this.
Okay, let's go. I need lunch anyway.
Really? The Animal Planet masturbation comment gets nothing? You know, I have to think this shit up, Dalton. It's not like some jackass is sitting around writing my shit one-liners for me, you know? As they prepared to climb into Dalton's car, an unexpected stroke of luck fell upon him. Gentlemen? Officers? Beckoned a female voice from behind them. Approaching them was a young woman of perhaps her mid-20s. A mountain of red, curly hair bounced about her head as she trotted eagerly towards Bradshaw's car. She'd tied those locks into a ponytail that also did little to control the mop top. Her face was freckled, but nothing about her was unattractive. Dalton gazed over at Simon and was not surprised to see his partner giving her his full attention. She too was wearing scrubs, but they were a hot pink as opposed to the sterile white worn by the two men Dalton had seen earlier. "Hi," she announced when she first arrived. After that, she simply stood and stared, a smile plastered across her face. Dalton began to wonder if she was an employee or a patient. "Oh, I'm sorry, I must look like a crazy person," she said, before immediately clamping both hands over her mouth. From behind her locked palms, she squeaked, "We're not supposed to say crazy around here. You know, the patients and all."
Yeah, can we help you?
Dalton asked. "I think maybe I can help you. See, I work here. I knew Dr. Sawyer pretty well, and, well, with this Jeff Wood stuff coming back up." Crap.
What's your name?
Dalton barked. He didn't want to sound harsh or overly commanding, but with a possible lead standing just feet before him, it was hard to stay mellow. "Oh, if I give you my name, does that mean this is going public? Because I don't want to lose my job." Dalton felt his face grow hot.
You approached me, lady. You told me that you might have information on an ongoing murder investigation. That sort of thing requires some information.
The young woman began to look scared, as though she'd stepped into something that she thought was just a small pothole, but had suddenly found it to be a much deeper pit. My name is Penny Lux, but everyone around here calls me Pinkie Pie. You know, like the cartoon. The kids here came up with it, and..."
"What in the living hell is a Pinkie Pie?"
Dalton mumbled, preparing no doubt to recant her original statement and likely retreat back into the building. Luckily, Simon stepped forward and relieved Bradshaw of his daunting task. "Well, how about a hoof bump?" Simon announced as he approached Penny. "Oh, yeah," she giggled as the two bumped their closed fists. "My name is Simon Lyman, and nice to meet a fellow lover of all things Equestria."
"What the fuck am I watching?"
Dalton mumbled as he lit another cigarette. "Ignore him, he's a drag," Simon replied with a wink and a smile. Paying no mind to the annoyed grumble from his aging sidekick, Lyman continued. "So, let me guess. Deep web?" Penny's eyes went momentarily wide, as though she were a small child who'd been caught in the act of sneaking out of bed and raiding the fridge at 4 a.m. "Relax, Penny. Nothing illegal about it. It's just that I have a sinking feeling that you're about to spill a lot of information that most people shouldn't be privy to. Information perhaps about Jeff's killers. Information about how Dr. Sawyer might be connected in some way. You know, the kind of info you don't find on the bright web." "Oh, it's more than that. I mean, yeah. I found out about Brian Antoinez on some boards. I mean, that picture of him, the one taken by that kid after his mom killed him. It's floating around a few boards. I mean, lots of people talk about it. So, let's talk about it. We already know that Dr. Sawyer was treating him here. Did you know Brian personally?" "Yes." Do you mind if we go somewhere private?" "Well, let's do it, Pinkie Pie."
"The world has gone fucking nuts,"
Dalton grumbled once again, and the three loaded up into his car and drove off of the hospital campus. 15 minutes later, they were all seated in a cozy little corner at a coffee shop in Mandeville's small historic downtown area. On the way there, Penny had informed them that she was the assistant archivist director of the New Hope program. She didn't hate her job, nor was she out to defame the hospital. She did, however, have a suspicious view of Dr. Joseph Sawyer. Brian was such a nice kid. When he first showed up for inpatient treatment, I had high hopes for him. He was a foster kid, as I'm sure that you know, and he had been in and out for treatment for a while. He really wanted to get better. I always believed that. Simon, who clearly was better suited to take the lead on this, continued the soft interview. Dalton simply sat back and took notes, partially impressed and disgusted at the same time. He couldn't deny, though, that in a short period of time, Simon had gotten this girl wrapped around his finger. "And what do you think changed that?" he asked. "Sawyer. I mean, it had to be. He had this strange approach. Obviously, I wasn't sitting in there with them during his sessions, but I spent enough time playing checkers or Uno with these kids to usually know all the details of their time on the shrink's couch." What was so unusual about his approach? Well, two things, really. Okay, the first was that he treated some of the kids very differently than others. Most of his patients got the standard routine. He would spend about 20 minutes with them each week, and then he'd tweak his medications here and there, and he left most of the heavy lifting to his interns or the nursing staff. But then he had this other group, the group that Brian was in. He would spend much more time with them. I'm not sure exactly what he was doing in there, but as time went on, I noticed that the ones in his special group were becoming morbid. Morbid? How so? Well, the stuff that he'd talk to me about when we'd play cards or whatever, it was always about serial killers or something. And when Brian first showed up, he didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. He liked to draw. He wanted to be a cartoonist. He had ambitions. A few months with Sawyer, though, and he started focusing on murderers. One murderer in particular. Jeffrey Woods. Yeah. He'd go on and on about it. He told me that Jeff Woods was what happened when the pot boiled over. He said that Jeff the killer was a product of neglect and hate. And I get that. I mean, most people agree that his parents fucked him royally in that department. Brian would never give me any details about his time in Sawyer's office, but he didn't really have to. His sudden fascination did all the telling for him. But he could have gotten that information from anywhere, couldn't he? From listening to the news, maybe, or hearing other staff talking. What makes you think it came from Sawyer alone? It had just been Brian. I would likely have thought the same way, Simon, but he had two other patients that stick out. One I'm sure you all know of, Trent Vickers.
No shit. Vickers was being treated by Sawyer?
Dalton asked, speaking for the first time since they'd sat down. Well, yeah. Mostly outpatient from what I could tell. This was back in late 2015. I'd only been at the hospital for a little while, and I hadn't really gotten the feel for the place yet. I remember seeing Vickers there, though, and he'd come in and out and go straight to Sawyer's office. It wasn't too long before he started up that Jeff's Killers gang. I'm not saying that Sawyer is behind it. Hell, I mean, he might have nothing to do with it at all. All I know is that both Vickers and Antoinez went batshit overboard for Jeff the killer while under the care of Sawyer. You said there was another patient that stuck out. Oh, yeah, he's the one I'm most worried about. Vickers and Brian, well, they were creepy, sure. But this other one, she was scary. Who's the other girl? Promise? Let's try to help her. Yeah, but we can't help her if you don't tell us who she is. Is she a patient at the hospital? She was. But after Sawyer retired, she was released. Rumor has it that on his last day, he wrote a lengthy recommendation for her transfer to a teen group home. None of us could believe it, but there it was. Do you believe that Sawyer was coaching her into this fascination with Jeff Woods as well? Oh, no. She became obsessed. She came into the hospital with a disturbing obsession for Jeff the Killer. I mean, I honestly think she was Sawyer's dream patient. If he was programming some sort of disturbed impulse into patients, she came batteries included. Can you give us her name? What group home she was moved to? Penny removed a pen and notepad from her purse and began to jot down the information. Dalton and Simon drove Penny back to her car and parked at the hospital. They thanked her for the information and promised to be in touch soon. As they turned to leave, she stopped them one last time. "Simon? Detective Bradshaw. Don't let your guard down around her, okay? She looks sweet and innocent, but there's something very dark about this little girl." Penny completed this thought by raising up the left side of her pink scrub top and displaying a nasty scar. "It's because I told her that Jeff Woods wasn't someone to idolize. She didn't hesitate to attack me with scissors on my desk. She didn't get angry. She didn't build up to anything. She didn't want me to talk bad about her hero. I said Jeff wasn't someone to inspire towards. And the next thing I know, I'm bleeding from my abdomen. She showed no emotion during or after the incident. She just told me, 'Now you know better,' and placed the scissors back on my desk." Dalton and Simon shared a quick glance before climbing back into their car and driving away from Southeast Louisiana Psych for the second time that day.
"So, yeah, is that what you kids call flirting nowadays?"
Dalton asked, as they turned right into Highway 19, pointed in the direction of Mandeville proper. "Oh yeah, me and Pinkie Pie, we're going to connect on Facebook tonight. Gonna make some cupcakes of our own," Simon replied.
"She's a witness, dumbass. Don't ruin this case by..."
"Calm down, Gramps. I'm joking. I mean, if she weren't involved in an open investigation, who knows, right?"
"Okay, get back on track. This halfway house, Youth Healing. It's going to be coming up to your left here in a minute. It's an old plantation home, believe it or not."
"You're gonna have to pull another one of your bait the trap, chain smoke for an hour ploys here too?"
"Not this time, Ace. I happen to know one of the ladies that runs this joint."
Simon observed the smug expression from Dalton's face and asked, "You know her... how?"
Let's just say we made a few cupcakes together."
"Oh, sick man. You just ruined that line forever."
"With extra frosting,"
Dalton added. Simon refused to comment any further on the matter. Hey there kids, it's me, Mrcreepypasta, and I wanted to say thank you for watching tonight's video. And also, I feel like this is something that really needs to be said. I'm pretty sure all of you are hearing this far too many times from far too many places, but during the current COVID-19 crisis that's going on, make sure that you're practicing safe hygiene. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, don't lick random strangers on the street. I know that there's a lot of memes going around about it, but the biggest note is that although it may not be deadly for everyone, keeping it contained reduces the risk of death to everyone. So, important. Also, a number of conventions are currently closing around the United States. If there's a convention near you that I was intending to appear at, if there's an announcement of any kind of closures, I'll be sure to let all of you know on Twitter and the community page, so make sure you're following me there to get any information about that. And also, if you look in the description down below, you're going to find a group of my friends that are artists that make their living at events and conventions such as this. So I know all of them would appreciate any kind of support that you could show, especially if you feel like you're missing out on some of their artwork from missing out of these cons. So take a look there, see if there's anything you like. I know a lot of them work on creepypasta stuff, horror movie stuff, and generally anime and comic books that at least I love, so I hope that you do as well. And a very special thank you to everybody on that Patreon, patreon.com/Mrcreepypasta, especially Ariel Torres, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Ken Lando Higuchi, Brianna Van Tine-Janzen, Chompski, TheRedOakShieldVirus, Sindee Barney, Asia, G. Weevil 3, Diana Kraus, Stephen VanHuss, Tristain Pelton, Nico, TheGingerBroz, Dante Rowe, Raphael Rodriguez, Don Meulmeester, Eliminator86, SteampunkSinner, Kaleb Dougal, Sky Harbor, The Homeless Bird 93, Gabrielle Undefined, Bobby Carmen, Liam Newman, Aaron Stormcrow, Bobby Jean Torgan, Dr. Strawberry, The Wormhole, Barbara Macedo, and Vic. Thank you guys so much, and if anyone would like to join them on that list, head over to patreon.com/Mrcreepypasta. Here's hoping that you guys are loving the horror as much as I am. And sweet dreams.